The forest moon of Kepler 494c stretched endlessly in all directions, its purple trees swaying in the gentle breeze. Dr. Sarah Chen stepped carefully through the thick undergrowth, her scanner beeping steadily in her hand. The research vessel Endeavour floated high above the canopy, a silver dot against the orange sky. "Sarah, you're getting too far from the landing zone," Captain Morrison's voice crackled through her comm unit. "We need to return to the ship in 30 minutes. Sarah ignored him. Her scanner was picking up something unusual. Metal. Lots of it. And it was hot, which meant it was recent. She pushed through a wall of vines and stopped dead in her tracks. Before her lay the twisted remains of a spaceship. It was nothing like human technology. The metal was dark blue and seemed to flow like water, even though it was solid. Strange symbols covered the hull. Smoke still rose from several sections where fires had burned out hours ago. "Captain," Sarah whispered into her comm. "You need to see this." "What is it, Chen?" "A crash site. Alien ship recent." The comm went silent for a long moment. Then Morrison's voice returned, sharp and serious. "Do not approach the wreckage." "That's an order?" "Return to base immediately." Sarah moved closer to the ship anyway. As a xenobiologist, she had dreamed of this moment her entire life. First contact with alien technology. She couldn't just walk away. The ship was huge, maybe 3 times the size of their research shuttle. Parts of it had scattered across a wide area when it crashed. Sarah picked her way carefully through the debris, her scanner recording everything. That's when she heard it. A low rumbling sound, like breathing, but deeper than any human could manage. Sarah froze. The sound came again, weaker this time. Something was alive in there. She followed the sound to a section of the ship that had broken away from the main hull. Inside, she could see movement. Her heart pounded as she climbed through a gap in the twisted metal. The interior was dark and filled with strange equipment. Emergency lights flickered red, and there, lying against a far wall, was something that made Sarah gasp. It looked like a wolf, but it walked on 2 legs like a human. It was huge, almost 7 feet tall even lying down. Its fur was silver blue and thick. It wore some kind of armor that was cracked and broken. Dark blue blood seeped from several wounds on its body. The creature's eyes opened as Sarah approached. They were bright yellow and filled with pain. It tried to lift its head but couldn't manage it. "Easy," Sarah said softly, even though she knew it couldn't understand her. "I'm here to help." The alien wolf thing made a sound that might have been words in its own language. Its breathing was getting weaker. Sarah activated her emergency medical scanner. The readings were unlike anything she'd ever seen, but the basic signs were clear. "This being was dying. Fast, Sarah!" Captain Morrison's voice boomed through her comm. "Where are you?" "I'm reading your signal inside the wreckage. Get out of there now." "Captain, there's a survivor," Sarah said, not taking her eyes off the alien. "It's badly injured. We need to get it to the medical bay." "Absolutely not. We don't know what diseases it might carry. We don't know if it's dangerous. Leave it and return to the ship immediately." Sarah looked at the dying creature. Its yellow eyes met hers. In them she saw something universal: fear, pain, and resignation. This being knew it was going to die. "I can't leave it," Sarah said. "That's an order, Chen." Sarah turned off her comm. She had brought emergency medical supplies with her, basic items for treating human injuries. She didn't know if they would work on an alien, but she had to try. First, she needed to stop the bleeding. The worst wound was on the creature's side, where something sharp had torn through both armor and flesh. Sarah used her entire supply of medical foam to seal it. The alien watched her work. It said something in its language, the words coming out weak and broken. Sarah wished she could understand, but tone was universal. It sounded like the creature was trying to tell her something important. "Don't try to talk," Sarah said gently. "Save your strength." She injected the alien with a general painkiller, hoping its biology was similar enough to humans for it to work. The creature's breathing seemed to ease slightly, but it was still dying. Sarah could see it in the readings from her scanner. Whatever these beings were made of, they needed help she couldn't give with her basic supplies. The alien raised one of its arms. Its hand was huge, with long fingers that ended in sharp claws. But it moved gently, touching Sarah's arm. The contact lasted only a second before the arm fell back down. Sarah made her decision. She activated her emergency beacon, the one that would bring a rescue shuttle directly to her location. Then she turned her comm back on. "Captain, I need immediate medical evac." The alien is still alive, and I'm bringing it back to the ship. Chen, I forbid it. You are directly disobeying orders. Yes, sir, I am. The rescue shuttle arrived 20 minutes later. Sarah had spent the time trying to keep the alien stable. Its breathing was getting shallower, but it was still alive. Dr. Patel, the ship's chief medical officer, climbed down from the shuttle. He took one look at the alien and shook his head. Sarah, this is insane. We don't know anything about its biology. I can't treat something I don't understand. We have to try, Sarah said. Look at it. It's intelligent. It's in pain. We can't just let it die. Patel stared at the alien for a long moment. The creature's eyes were still open, still aware. Fine, he said finally. But if this thing dies on my table, Morrison is going to have both our heads. Getting the alien onto the shuttle was difficult. It was heavy and awkward to move, but Sarah noticed something as they lifted it. The creature tried to help, using what little strength it had left to make the job easier. It was cooperating. During the flight back to the Endeavour, Sarah sat next to the alien. Its breathing was very weak now. She wasn't even sure it was still conscious. But as they docked with the main ship, the alien's eyes opened one more time. It looked directly at Sarah and made a sound that was almost like a whisper. Then its eyes closed. Sarah didn't know what the sound meant, but she felt like the alien had been trying to say something important. Maybe thank you. Maybe goodbye. Maybe something else entirely. All she knew was that she had found an intelligent being dying alone in a crashed ship, and she had refused to let it face death without help. Whether that made her a hero or a fool, she would find out soon enough. The medical bay doors opened, and Dr. Patel rushed the alien inside. Sarah watched through the window as the medical team surrounded the table. She had done everything she could. Now she had to face Captain Morrison. The alien opened its eyes 3 days later. Sarah was sitting in the chair beside the medical bed when it happened. She had been there almost constantly, watching the monitors and helping Dr. Patel figure out the creature's biology. The yellow eyes focused on her slowly. The alien tried to sit up, but the restraints Dr. Patel had insisted on held it down. Immediately, the creature began to struggle. Hey, it's okay, Sarah said, standing up quickly. You're safe. You're hurt, but you're safe. The alien stopped struggling and stared at her. It said something in its own language. The words were deep and rumbling, but Sarah could hear the confusion in them. I know you can't understand me, Sarah said, but we're trying to help you. Dr. Patel had installed a translation computer next to the bed. It had been analyzing the sounds the alien made while unconscious, trying to build a basic understanding of its language. The screen showed several possible meanings for the words the alien had just spoken. Sarah looked at the translations. Where am I? Was the most likely meaning. She pointed to herself. Sarah, she said clearly. Then she pointed around the room. Medical bay, ship safe. The alien's eyes followed her gestures. It was clearly intelligent. When she pointed to herself and said her name again, the alien repeated it. The word came out strange in its deep voice, but recognizable. Sarah, the alien said. Sarah smiled. Yes, Sarah. She pointed to the alien. What's your name? The alien understood the question. It pointed to itself and said something that sounded like Kethvar. Kethvar, Sarah repeated. The alien nodded, then said something longer. The translation computer worked for several seconds before showing its best guess. Why did you bring me here? I should be dead. Sarah felt a chill. The alien wasn't grateful to be alive. It seemed upset about it. Over the next few hours, Sarah slowly began to understand the situation. Using the translation computer and simple gestures, Kethvar explained what had happened. His ship had carried 8 of his people. They called themselves the Vorthak. They had been exploring this system when their navigation equipment failed. Kethvar had been the navigator. The crash was his fault. All 7 of his packmates had died. In Vorthak culture, this meant Kethvar was cursed. He should have died with them. By surviving, he had brought shame on himself and his entire family line. That's ridiculous, Sarah said when she finally understood. It was an accident. You couldn't have known the equipment would fail. But Kethvar didn't see it that way. He explained that the other Vorthak had already come to the crash site. They had performed death rituals for the 7 who died. When they found Kethvar still alive, they had declared him cursed and left him to die alone. This was not cruelty, Kethvar explained. This was proper. A Vorthak who lived when his pack died was no longer truly Vorthak. He was nothing. Sarah was horrified. So they just left you there? To die slowly? Cathvar nodded. He seemed confused by her anger. In his mind, his people had done the right thing. It was Sarah who was wrong for saving him. I must return to the crash site, Cathvar said through the translator. I must die properly. No, Sarah said firmly. You're hurt. You need time to heal. Healing prolongs shame, Cathvar replied. Better to die quickly. This was when Captain Morrison chose to enter the medical bay. He had been avoiding the area since Sarah brought Cathvar aboard, but now he looked angry. Chen, we need to talk, Morrison said. Outside. Sarah followed him into the hallway. Morrison's face was red with anger. Do you have any idea what you've done? Morrison demanded. I've been trying to contact the Vorthak fleet for 3 days. When they finally answered, they told me their warrior is dead. They performed funeral rites for him. They want nothing to do with him. He's not dead, Sarah said. He's right there. That's the problem. Morrison shouted. According to their culture, he is dead. By keeping him alive, we're committing some kind of grave insult. They're demanding we return his body for proper disposal. Sarah felt cold. His body? He's alive. Not according to them. And Chen, there's something else. The Vorthak aren't just explorers. They're a military species. Their fleet commander is on his way here personally. If we don't hand over their dead warrior, this could become a diplomatic incident. Sarah thought about Cathvar lying in the medical bay, asking to be returned to the crash site to die. How long do we have? 2 days, maybe 3. Sarah went back into the medical bay. Cathvar was staring at the ceiling, his yellow eyes filled with sadness. Your people are coming, Sarah said. Cathvar nodded. Good. They will take me back to die properly. What if I don't let them? Cathvar looked at her in surprise. You cannot stop them. They are warriors. You are... He paused, clearly trying to think of a word that wouldn't be insulting. You are small, Sarah almost laughed. Cathvar was right. She was small compared to him, and if his people were all like him, the humans would be completely outmatched in any fight, but that didn't change how she felt. Cathvar, Sarah said. Where I come from, every life has value. Even when bad things happen, even when people make mistakes, they still deserve to live. This is weakness, Cathvar said. But he didn't sound as certain as before. Maybe, Sarah said, but it's our weakness, and I won't let you die just because your people think you should. Cathvar stared at her for a long time. Why? He finally asked. I am not your pack. I am nothing to you. Sarah sat back down in her chair. Because you're alive. Because you're intelligent. Because you have thoughts and feelings and experiences that matter. Because when I found you dying, you looked scared and I couldn't just walk away from that. Even if helping me brings danger to your own pack, Sarah thought about Captain Morrison's anger. About the approaching Vorthak fleet, about all the ways this could go wrong. Yes, she said. Even then, Cathvar closed his eyes. I do not understand your people. That's okay, Sarah said. I don't understand yours either. But maybe we can learn. For the next day, Sarah spent every free moment with Cathvar. She told him about human culture, about how humans valued individual life over group success. She explained concepts like heroism, sacrifice, and redemption that were completely foreign to Vorthak thinking. Cathvar listened, asking questions that showed he was thinking deeply about what she said. Sometimes he seemed confused, sometimes almost angry at ideas that challenged everything he believed, but he kept listening. And slowly, Sarah began to see changes in him. The resignation in his eyes started to fade, replaced by something that might have been curiosity. On the second day, Cathvar asked Sarah a question that surprised her. If I were human, he said, what would you expect me to do now? Sarah thought carefully before answering. I would expect you to grieve for your friends, to learn from what happened so it doesn't happen again, and then to find a way to honor their memory by doing something meaningful with the life you still have. Cathvar was quiet for a long time. And you believe this life still has value? Even though I failed my pack? Especially because you survived, Sarah said. Someone has to remember them. Someone has to carry their story forward. That someone is you. Outside the medical bay, Captain Morrison was preparing for the arrival of the Vorthak fleet. But inside, something new was beginning to grow in Cathvar's mind. Something that had never existed in Vorthak culture before. Hope. The Vorthak fleet arrived exactly when Captain Morrison predicted. Sarah was in the medical bay with Kethavar when the ship's alarm started blaring. Through the small window, she could see massive shapes moving against the stars. The Vorthak ships were nothing like human vessels. They looked organic, like giant creatures swimming through space. 5 ships, Morrison's voice announced over the intercom. They're requesting permission to come aboard. Kethavar had grown stronger over the past few days. He could sit up now, though he still needed help to stand. When he heard Morrison's announcement, his entire body went rigid. "They have come for me," he said quietly. "I won't let them take you," Sarah said. Kethavar looked at her with something that might have been affection. Over their days together, he had begun to understand human emotions better. "Sarah, you cannot fight the Vorthak. They are the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Maybe I can't fight them," Sarah said, "but I can try to talk to them." An hour later, Sarah stood in the main docking bay with Captain Morrison and a security team. The Vorthak had sent over a small shuttle, and now its doors were opening. The first Vorthak to emerge was even larger than Kethavar. His fur was darker, almost black and covered with scars. He wore armor that looked like it had seen many battles. Behind him came 4 other warriors, all just as intimidating. The leader's yellow eyes swept the docking bay until they found Morrison. When he spoke, his voice was like thunder. "I am War Leader Throcktar of the Vorthak Empire. You have sent messages about our dead warrior Kethavar. We have come to collect his body for proper burning." Morrison stepped forward nervously. "War Leader, there's been some confusion. Kethavar isn't dead. He's alive and recovering in our medical bay." Throcktar's eyes narrowed. "Impossible. Kethavar died with his pack. We performed the death rites. He is no longer among the living, but he is," Sarah said, stepping forward before Morrison could stop her. "I found him. I saved him. He's breathing and talking and very much alive." Throcktar turned his attention to Sarah. She felt very small under his gaze, but she didn't back down. "You are the one who interfered with our customs," Throcktar said. "It wasn't a question." "I saved a life," Sarah replied. "Where I come from, that's considered a good thing. Where you come from is irrelevant. Kethavar is Vorthak. He follows Vorthak law. He should have died honorably with his pack." "But he didn't die," Sarah said. "He survived. Doesn't that count for something?" Throcktar made a sound that might have been laughter, but there was no humor in it. "Survival without honor is worse than death. You have condemned Kethavar to a life of shame." "I've given him a chance to find new purpose," Sarah argued. "To learn from what happened and do something meaningful with his life." "Meaningless words," Throcktar said. "Bring us Kethavar's body. We will end his suffering and burn him properly." Morrison looked at Sarah with panic in his eyes. The security team was hopelessly outmatched by the Vorthak warriors. There was no way they could fight their way out of this situation. But Sarah had an idea. A crazy, dangerous idea that would probably get her killed. But it was the only chance she could think of. "War Leader Throcktar," Sarah said formally, "I challenge your right to take Kethavar." The docking bay went completely silent. Even Morrison stared at Sarah in shock. Throcktar's eyes widened slightly. "You challenge me?" "Yes," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. "In human culture, we have the right to fight for what we believe in. I believe Kethavar's life has value. I'll fight you for it." Throcktar looked confused. "You would risk your life for a being not of your pack?" "Yes, even though you cannot possibly win." Sarah's hands were shaking, but she nodded. "Yes." Throcktar stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to one of his warriors and said something in the Vorthak language. The warrior looked surprised and said something back. They had a brief conversation that Sarah couldn't understand. Finally, Throcktar turned back to Sarah. "This is unprecedented. No being has ever challenged Vorthak law for another not of their blood. But you have shown courage, small human. I will grant your challenge." Morrison stepped forward quickly. "Wait, that's not necessary. We can work something out. The challenge has been made and accepted," Throcktar said firmly. "If the human wins, Kethavar may choose his own fate. If I win, we take his body and burn it as is proper. And if I lose?" Sarah asked. "Then you die with him," Throcktar said simply. Sarah felt her stomach drop, but she nodded. "I accept." The Vorthak warriors cleared a space in the docking bay. Throcktar removed his armor, revealing muscles that looked like they could crush Sarah without effort. He was at least 3 times her size and probably 10 times her strength. Morrison grabbed Sarah's arm. This is suicide. You can't possibly win. I know, Sarah said. But maybe I don't have to win. Maybe I just have to show them something they've never seen before. The fight began. Throcktar could have ended it in seconds, but he seemed curious about what Sarah would do. He moved slowly, testing her reactions. Sarah tried to stay mobile, using her smaller size to avoid his attacks. She landed a few hits, but they had no effect on the massive warrior. His claws could have torn her apart, but he seemed to be holding back, treating this more like a training exercise than a real fight. After several minutes, Sarah was exhausted and bleeding from several minor wounds. Throcktar had barely worked up a sweat. You fight well for such a small creature, Throcktar said. But this ends now. He moved faster than Sarah had expected, grabbing her by the arm and lifting her off the ground. His grip was strong enough to crush her bones, but he was still being careful not to seriously injure her. That's when the docking bay doors opened and Kethvar entered. He was leaning heavily on Dr. Patel, but he was standing on his own. His yellow eyes took in the scene quickly, understanding immediately what was happening. Stop, Kethvar said in a voice that carried surprising authority. Throcktar paused, still holding Sarah in the air. Kethvar, you should not be here. Put her down, Throcktar. Sarah fights for me. That makes her my responsibility. You are dead, Kethvar. You have no responsibilities. Then why are you fighting a living being for a dead one? Kethvar asked. It was a simple question, but it hit Throcktar like a physical blow. The war leader set Sarah down carefully, his eyes never leaving Kethvar. You should have died with honor, Throcktar said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. Perhaps, Kethvar said, but I did not. I lived. And in living, I have learned something important. What could you possibly have learned in this place? Kethvar looked at Sarah, who was holding her injured arm but still standing defiantly. I have learned that pack loyalty can exist between different species. That honor can be found in protecting others, not just in dying with them. This human risked her life for me, knowing she could not win. Is that not the behavior of a true warrior? Throcktar looked at Sarah with new interest. She is small, weak, in body perhaps, but not in spirit. She has shown me that the strongest pack is not the one that dies together, but the one that lives to protect others. The docking bay was silent. Sarah could see the other Vorthak warriors looking uncertain. This was clearly not going the way they had expected. Throcktar studied Kethvar for a long moment. You speak of things that go against all Vorthak teaching. Yes, Kethvar said simply. Perhaps it is time for new teachings. War leader Throcktar stood motionless for what felt like hours. His yellow eyes moved between Sarah and Kethvar, processing something that had never existed in Vorthak history before. Finally, he spoke. You claim this human showed pack loyalty to you? More than loyalty, Kethvar said, stepping away from Dr. Patel's support. He swayed slightly but remained standing. She showed something we have no word for in our language. Explain. Kethvar looked at Sarah, then back at his war leader. She saved me knowing I was not her pack, knowing it would bring her trouble, knowing her own leaders disapproved. She gained nothing from saving me except the knowledge that she had done what she believed was right. Throcktar's scarred face showed confusion. This makes no sense. Why would any being risk themselves for someone not of their blood? Sarah stepped forward, still holding her injured arm. Because it's the right thing to do. Because every intelligent life has value. Because when someone is hurt and dying, you help them if you can. Even enemies? Throcktar asked. Even enemies, Sarah confirmed. This is weakness, one of the other Vorthak warriors said. It makes no strategic sense, but Throcktar held up a hand for silence. Perhaps. But consider this, Drakmor. This small human fought me knowing she would lose. Knowing she would die, she did this to protect Kethvar. Is this not the same courage we value in battle? Drakmor looked uncertain. It is. Unusual courage. And Kethvar, Throcktar continued, you broke your exile to defend her. You should have let her die. Instead, you chose to act. Why? Kethvar thought carefully before answering. Because I realized something, war leader. Sarah did not see me as a failed navigator or a cursed survivor. She saw me as someone worth saving. And for the first time since the crash, I began to see myself that way too. Dangerous thinking, Throcktar said, but there was something in his voice that wasn't entirely disapproving. Perhaps, Kethvar agreed, but also powerful thinking. Sarah made me understand that my survival could have meaning beyond shame. That I could honor my dead packmates not by joining them in death, but by living in a way that would make their sacrifice worthwhile. Throcktar began pacing, his heavy footsteps echoing in the docking bay. You speak of concepts that challenge everything we believe. The pack is everything. Individual survival means nothing. I'm not saying the pack means nothing, Kethavar said. I'm saying the pack can be bigger than we thought. Sarah proved that to me. How? Kethavar gestured to Sarah, then to Dr. Patel and Captain Morrison. These humans made me part of their pack even though I was a stranger. Even though helping me put them in danger, they chose to expand their pack to include me. Sarah felt a warmth in her chest at Kethavar's words. She hadn't thought of it that way, but he was right. The crew of the Endeavor had risked themselves for him. Throcktar stopped pacing and faced Sarah directly. Human, you understand that what you have done goes against our most sacred laws? Yes, Sarah said. And you understand that by our laws, Kethavar should be considered dead? I understand that's what your laws say, but laws can be wrong. A dangerous growl came from Drakmor, but Throcktar silenced him with a look. You would judge Vorthak law? Throcktar asked. Sarah knew she was walking on dangerous ground, but she couldn't stop now. I'm not judging your laws. I'm judging what I saw with my own eyes. I saw someone in pain who needed help. Everything else was just details, Throcktar repeated slowly. Our entire culture is just details to you. Sarah realized she had gone too far. I didn't mean— No, Throcktar interrupted. Do not apologize. Your honesty is refreshing, and perhaps necessary. He turned back to Kethavar. You believe your survival can serve a purpose? I do. The navigation failure that caused our crash. I understand what went wrong now. Dr. Patel and Sarah helped me study the ship's data records. The failure was caused by magnetic interference we had never encountered before. Other Vorthak ships could face the same problem, and I could develop new navigation protocols. Train other navigators to recognize the danger signs. My survival could prevent other packs from suffering the same fate. Throcktar's eyes lit up with interest. You could save other Vorthak lives? Many lives, Kethavar confirmed, but only if I live to share what I've learned. The war leader was quiet for a long time. Sarah could see him struggling with concepts that went against everything he had been taught. Finally, Throcktar made his decision. I will make you a proposal, Kethavar. The Empire will give you 1 cycle, 1 standard year, to prove that your survival serves the greater pack. If you can save Vorthak lives with your knowledge, your exile will be lifted. You will be welcomed back as a hero. And if I fail, Kethavar asked, then you will submit to proper death and your shame will be forgotten. Kethavar nodded slowly. I accept. But, Throcktar continued, you cannot return to Vorthak space during this time. Your presence would be disruptive. You must remain with these humans and work from here. Sarah felt relief flood through her. Kethavar would live, at least for now. I understand, Kethavar said. I will use this time wisely. Throcktar turned to Sarah. And you, human. You fought bravely for Kethavar's life. This shows a form of honor we do not fully understand but cannot ignore. Kethavar has spoken truly. You have made him part of your pack even though he was a stranger. What does that mean? Sarah asked. It means, Throcktar said, that you have done something no being has ever done before. You have changed a Vorthak's understanding of what pack loyalty can be. He paused, then added something that surprised everyone. Perhaps there is wisdom in your human ways that we have not considered. Captain Morrison stepped forward nervously. War leader, does this mean there will be peace between our peoples? Throcktar looked at Morrison with what might have been amusement. Peace is earned, not given, but your crew has shown honor in caring for Kethavar. That will be remembered. Over the next few hours, the Vorthak warriors prepared to leave, but before they departed, Throcktar had one final conversation with Kethavar. You understand that many Vorthak will consider you dead regardless of what I decide? Throcktar said. I understand. And you understand that if you fail to prove your worth, you will face execution? I understand that too. Then why do you choose this path? Kethavar looked at Sarah, who was having her arm treated by Dr. Patel nearby. Because someone believed I was worth saving, and now I want to prove she was right. Throcktar followed his gaze. This human means much to you. She gave me something I had never had before. What? Hope, Kethavar said simply. As the Vorthak shuttle prepared to depart, Throktar had one final surprise. He approached Sarah, who was now wearing a medical brace on her injured arm. "Human Sarah," he said formally, "you have done something unprecedented. You have shown that pack loyalty can exist between species. This is a concept worth studying. Thank you, War Leader. Do not thank me yet. Keeping Kethavar alive was the easy part. Now you must help him prove that his survival was worthwhile." Sarah looked at Kethavar, who was already working with Dr. Patel to download the navigation data from his crashed ship. "We will," Sarah said with confidence. Throktar nodded. "I believe you will try. Whether you will succeed, that remains to be seen." As the Vorthak shuttle disappeared into the darkness of space, Sarah realized that everything had changed. Kethavar was no longer just an injured alien they had rescued. He was now a member of their crew, their pack, with a mission that could save countless lives. The real work was just beginning. 1 year later, Sarah stood in the command center of the Endeavor, watching the main screen with nervous excitement. Today was the day Kethavar would present his findings to the Vorthak Empire. Today would determine whether he lived or died. The months had passed quickly. Kethavar had thrown himself into his work with an intensity that amazed the human crew. He studied every piece of data from the crash, analyzed the magnetic interference patterns, and developed new navigation protocols that could detect and avoid the deadly anomalies. But more than that, he had become something none of them expected. He had become family. "Sarah," Captain Morrison called from his chair, "the Vorthak fleet is requesting permission to come aboard." Sarah nodded. "Granted, Captain." Kethavar stood beside her, taller and stronger than he had been a year ago. His fur had grown back thick and healthy, and his yellow eyes showed confidence instead of resignation. He wore a new kind of armor, a blend of Vorthak design and human technology that Dr. Patel had helped him create. "Are you ready?" Sarah asked him. "I am ready," Kethavar replied. "Thanks to you, I know what I am fighting for now." The past year had changed all of them. Kethavar had learned human concepts of individual worth and chosen family. The crew had learned Vorthak ideas about honor and pack loyalty. Together, they had created something new. When War Leader Throktar entered the conference room an hour later, he was not alone. With him came 5 other Vorthak, including one whose armor marked him as even higher ranking than Throktar. Fleet Commander Vektar, Throktar announced formally, "May I present Kethavar, formerly of the 13th Navigation Pack." The fleet commander was massive, even by Vorthak standards. His gray fur showed his age, and his eyes held the wisdom of countless battles. He studied Kethavar with interest. "So," Vektar said, "this is the dead one who lives." "I am no longer dead, Fleet Commander," Kethavar replied with dignity. "I am reborn with purpose." "Show me this purpose." What followed was the most important presentation of Kethavar's life. Using holographic displays and data charts, he explained the magnetic anomalies that had caused his ship to crash. He showed how the interference patterns could be detected in advance, and demonstrated the new navigation protocols he had developed. "In the past year," Kethavar said, 3 more Vorthak ships have encountered similar anomalies. 2 were destroyed. The 3rd survived because they followed my new protocols." Vektar's eyes sharpened. "You have already saved Vorthak lives?" 18 warriors in the 3rd ship lived because of Kethavar's work, Throktar confirmed. The ship's navigator sent a full report. Sarah felt pride swell in her chest. Kethavar had done exactly what he promised. He had turned his survival into something meaningful. But Vektar wasn't finished. "This is impressive work. But saving lives is not the only measure of worth. What else have you learned in your time among humans?" Kethavar glanced at Sarah, then back at the fleet commander. "I have learned that the pack can be stronger when it includes different kinds of minds. Human thinking and Vorthak thinking together create solutions neither could find alone." "Explain." "The navigation protocols I developed required both human understanding of magnetic fields and Vorthak knowledge of deep space travel. Dr. Patel's medical expertise helped me understand how the interference affects Vorthak brain chemistry. Sarah's biological knowledge showed me patterns in the data I had missed." Vektar turned to Sarah. "And what have you learned from Kethavar?" Sarah had prepared for this question. "I learned that true strength comes from combining loyalty with wisdom. Kethavar taught me that protecting your pack sometimes means making difficult choices. And he showed me that honor isn't about following rules blindly. It's about doing what serves the greater good. Interesting. Vectar studied both of them carefully. And how do you propose to use these lessons? This was the moment Kethavar had been working toward all year. Fleet Commander, I request permission to establish a new kind of pack. A mixed crew of humans and Vorthak working together on exploration missions. The silence in the room was complete. Even Thraktar looked surprised. You want to create permanent alliances between our species? Vectar asked. I want to create something that has never existed before, Kethavar said. A pack that draws strength from differences instead of similarities. Humans see things we miss. We see things they miss. Together, we could explore space more safely and effectively than either species could alone. And you believe this Sarah would agree to such an arrangement? Sarah stepped forward. I've already agreed, Fleet Commander. Kethavar is the finest navigator I've ever worked with. More than that, he's become someone I trust completely. If the Empire approves this plan, I'll gladly serve alongside him. Vectar looked at Captain Morrison. And your crew? Morrison nodded. Dr. Patel has learned more about alien biology in the past year than he did in his previous 20 years of research. Our engineer says Kethavar's improvements to our navigation systems have made us twice as efficient. We'd be honored to continue working together. The fleet commander was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke to Kethavar. 1 year ago, you were considered cursed, dead, a shame to your bloodline. Today, you present me with innovations that will save countless Vorthak lives and a proposal that could change the future of both our species. Yes, Fleet Commander. This transformation began when a human refused to let you die alone. Kethavar looked at Sarah with affection. It began when someone showed me that my life had value beyond my failures. Vectar stood up, his massive frame dominating the room. Kethavar of the 13th Navigation Pack, I declare your exile ended. Your shame is erased. You will be remembered not as the navigator who crashed, but as the navigator who survived to save others. Relief flooded through Sarah. Kethavar was safe. But Vectar wasn't finished. More than that, your proposal for mixed crews is approved. You will lead the first joint exploration unit. Your mission will be to map the dangerous sectors where magnetic anomalies are common. Thank you, Fleet Commander, Kethavar said, but Sarah could hear the emotion in his voice. Do not thank me yet. This is a great experiment. If it fails, both our species will suffer. If it succeeds, Vectar paused. If it succeeds, you will have created something that could reshape how we explore the galaxy. 3 months later, Sarah stood on the bridge of a new ship. It was unlike anything either species had built before. A fusion of human and Vorthak technology that was more capable than either could have created alone. The crew was equally mixed. Human scientists worked alongside Vorthak warriors. Vorthak navigators learned from human engineers. Everyone brought their own strengths to the team. Kethavar served as the ship's captain, a role that would have been impossible under the old Vorthak system. But he had proven that worth came from wisdom and leadership, not just from following tradition. Captain, the communications officer called out, we're receiving a distress signal from the outer rim. A ship is trapped in a magnetic storm. Kethavar looked at Sarah, who served as his second-in-command. Analysis? It's exactly the kind of situation your protocols were designed for, Sarah replied. We can reach them safely and guide them out. Plot a course, Kethavar ordered. Maximum speed. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, Sarah reflected on how much had changed. A year and a half ago, she had found a dying alien in a crashed ship. She had refused to let him die, even though it meant disobeying orders and risking her career. Now, that same alien was captain of an advanced starship, leading a crew that represented the best of both species. His navigation protocols had already saved dozens of ships. His mixed crew concept was being copied throughout both fleets. Most importantly, Kethavar had found something he never thought possible. A new kind of pack that valued him not despite his failures, but because of how he had overcome them. Sarah, Kethavar said as they dropped out of hyperspace near the distressed ship, I have been thinking about our first meeting. What about it? You told me once that humans believe every life has value. At the time, I thought this was weakness, and now? Kethavar smiled, an expression he had learned from humans. Now I know it is the greatest strength any species can have. The willingness to save a life, even when it serves no purpose, creates purposes that never existed before. On the main screen, they could see the ship trapped in the magnetic storm. It was a Vorthak vessel, struggling against forces that would have destroyed it without the new protocols Kethavar had developed. "All stations ready for rescue operations," Sarah announced. "Take us in," Kethavar ordered. As they moved to save the trapped ship, Sarah knew they were doing more than just conducting a rescue. They were proving that the stubborn human refusal to abandon others could indeed change the galaxy. The alien wolf she had found, dying in a crashed ship, had become something neither species could have imagined. A bridge between worlds, a leader who drew strength from diversity, and living proof that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply refuse to let someone die alone. Behind them, the monument they had built on the forest moon stood as a testament to the 7 Vorthak who had died in the original crash. But it was no longer a memorial to failure. It had become a symbol of hope, proof that those who survive tragedy can honor the fallen by building something better from the pieces that remain.